Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video tutorial. In this video, we're going to talk about variables. So I've got my notes here for PHP variables because I don't want to miss anything. If I do miss something, please leave it in the comments below and I'll make another video about that. This video is pretty detailed and I might miss something, and hopefully I won't, but I'm not following a PHP manual or anything like that. It's basically the knowledge that you need, and if I miss something, please let me know in the comments and I will go over that in another video. So talking about PHP variables, we've done in the first and second video, we've touched on PHP variables a little bit, and the type of variable we used in the first and second video was basically a string. And so I'm going to show you how to create each type of variable and what's different about them and how you can change from one variable to the next. All right, so let's get started. So here on our ideapro.io, if I can get to it, on our ideapro.io example.php page that I created specifically for this video, we've done a little bit of coding here with the name variable and the new sentence, and all this comes from the first and second video. So if you need to watch that, go back and watch that. If you understand a little bit about variables and stuff, the second video we talked about single and double quotes. If you don't understand those, I would go back and watch that video because it's important to know the difference between the single and double quotes. All right. So basically, let's get rid of this. And we're going to change this one here to our name, right? So to create a variable, let's get rid of this. Use a $sign. In PHP, use a $sign and then whatever you want to call that variable. Now, there's some rules or some best case following to naming variables, and it's basically whatever you decide you want to do. There's all lowercase, there's using underscores, and there's using camel case, and I'll show you the difference in those. So typically I like to use simple variables. Let's call it string. Like if we decide we want a variable called string, it's all lowercase, it's simple to use, it's simple to remember, and if I need to call it way down the page, again, it's easy to remember. Like earlier we did one called name, right? And equals, and then whatever that variable equals. But if you're going to do a strict, or not a strict, but a complicated variable name, you might want to use camel case. So what camel case is let's say current user's name. So we'll say current user's name. So by that, we've added a capital U, a capital N in there to separate those different words. Now you can use an underscore, current user's name, like that, current user's name, and then the value of that variable. Doing this gets a little bit more complicated, and it's always easier to use like a camel case. Now, if you try to use a hyphen, it's going to cause some errors, and see how that doesn't work there. It changes this to purple. A hyphen is not allowed in a variable name. All right, so it would either need to be an underscore or camel case, or you could all use all lowercase, but it's going to look bad, especially if you're building long variables. I like to try to keep it as simple as possible. Current username, current username, whatever you want to call it. So user name, you can do it like that, where it's a simple username, because you're going to remember that when you call it in the down below in the rest of the page. Now, if you keep a flow, and I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, if you keep it uniform throughout your entire code and every project you do, you're going to be able to use those variables later on, and you'll be like, oh, username. I know that I use user and then capital N for name, and that's the structure that I have for the entire project or every project that I use. And that way you understand, you can keep up with those without having to go back and look and see what you used on each variable. All right. So the way that you create a variable, and we're going to change this to name just to make it simple. So the variable name is going to be like my name. So my name, Josh, right? So then here we're going to put in hello, Josh. So if we do that, we come back to our page and refresh, it says hello, Josh. Okay, so what we've created here, this is called a string. Now, these two quotes, right, these two lines here together give you the ability to create a comment. Now, this is a single line comment. So if I go down to the next line and I start typing, it's going to not still be in comment mode. It's going to like I could go down here and do new variable is equal to Tim, right? Tim, time, whatever. So these double quotes here create a comment, and I'm going to go into comments later on and when and why you should use them. But all your code, you should add comments to it so that if someone else comes in to look at your code to fix something, they can understand what's going on. And I guarantee you, if you develop a lot of stuff, you're going to want to add comments in your code just for yourself. Because once you get into hundreds of lines of code and you start looking through pieces to find an error you made or to change something, it's going to be hard to find that unless you've added comments to understand what each piece does. So the comments are important, and we can talk about those later on. Now, I do want to talk about one other type of comment real quick. It's a /*. And a /* gives you the ability to add multiple lines of comments. So you can continue to add lines. I got a hair that's on a mustache or something that's driving me nuts. To add lines of comments without having to change anything. And then to close those comments, you do a */. Now you see down below here, the HTML here turned back to normal color. If I take this out, it's still going to have everything after that in comment mode. So we can add that comment like that, right? So this is a single line comment, and this is a multi-line comment, all right? This is very helpful if you have a large bit of code that you want to comment out, like something didn't work and you're like, oh, I really need to get this page working, something in this line, in this area is wrong. You can just comment this whole group of code out and none of that code will work. All right, so that's a little bit on comments, and I want to talk about that more later on. All right, so I just want to get rid of that line. All right, so by default, when creating a variable name like this in single or double quotes, it's going to be a string. So if we change this to Tim, even though it's in double quotes and not single quotes, it's still, PHP is automatically going to recognize it as a string, right? Now, if we did one, and let's call this one name 2, let's call this one name 3. If we did one and we just said Michael, like that, that's going to cause an error because Michael is not a integer. Michael is a string. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to give you an error that says that it can't find the constant Michael. Now what a constant is a constant is a constant variable. So the way you would define a constant variable is you would define it up here and you would say Michael. Let's do a constant in capital here. And Michael, the variable name is Michael. So now basically what we're saying is name3 is equal to the constant Michael, but it needs to be the same. So basically now PHP will see that Michael is a string and it will give you the name Michael. So if we do name3 and refresh, so now it's going to say hello Michael because it sees this constant up here. Now if we called this a user, right, and refreshed, it's still going to say hello Michael because it's using this constant that we defined here. Now typically whenever when you don't put something into a single or double quotes, it's more than likely not going to be a constant, it's going to be an integer. An integer 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up, whatever that integer number is. All right. So if we do an integer and it's 5, right? And we say Tim's age is, and then we call this variable 3, it's going to say Tim's age is 5. Now by default, because we're using a number on that variable, we're not putting it in as a single or a double quotes, PHP already knows that that's an integer. And if we put this in single quotes, it's going to do the exact same thing on our page here. It's going to say Tim's age is 5. But the reason why you would use this as an integer is if you wanted to calculate numbers, all right? So if we said the sum is, and we said 5 plus 2. So now basically what that's going to do is it's going to say the sum is 7. So it's going to say integer 5 plus integer 2 gives us 7, right? So now if we say 5 plus name 2, we come back here, it's going to say 5. And the reason why is because 5 plus name 2 is not an integer. So it doesn't understand what really to do with that variable because that variable is a string. So you can't do it that way. Now, if we went back up here and we said name 2 and we said this is 4, now we can say 5 plus $name and it's going to give us the sum is 9. So an integer plus a variable that's an integer will work correctly. But if this variable is not an integer, it's going to cause a problem, right? Now, what you can do is if you were to say double quotes and you put a 4 in here, again, what's it going to do? It's going to return a 9. That doesn't always work that way. And the problem is it actually sees and tries to change it based on the code, based on what it thinks is correct, right? The proper way to do that would be to call this an integer. So now it says, yes, I've put this as a string 4, but really it needs to be an integer, so you've changed that to an integer. It's best practice to create your variables in the type of variable that it needs to be. On some occasions, depending on where you're getting the value of that variable, you may have to change it to an integer like this. If you're pulling that information from a database, the database may be designed to hold that information as a variable or as a string and not a number, not an integer. So when you're pulling that information from the database, if that column in the database was created to hold a string of text and you put the value of 4 in there, it's going to return it to PHP as name2 is equal to string 4. And the proper way to fix that is to call it as an integer before. Now, we can go back up here and call these a string. like that. And so we can say this variable is a string and this variable is an integer. We can do it like that, and then we don't have to call it here. By default, by default, PHP understands when you're using a single quote or a double quote, it's going to be a string. When you're using a number without the double quotes, so if we just said 4, it automatically tags this variable as an integer. All right. So the next type of variable that we want to talk about, and if you guys have any questions about that, please put it in the comments. I don't think I'm missing anything, but I may be. This is just off of my head. Kind of got a few notes, but not really like extensive notes. So the next thing is adding strings together, right? So before we get into the next type of variable, I want to talk about adding strings together. So we've added variables or integers together. So 4 plus 5 is 9. So adding those integers together like that is pretty simple. Now, if we said string variable and we said, hello, my name is, and then we're gonna put a space after that. And then we said string 2 is equal to, and string, if I spell it correctly there, string 2 is equal to Josh, right? Wow, even type my own name right. There we go. So now we need to combine those strings together. And there's multiple ways you can do this, depending on what you need to do with those strings, all right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say new variable is equal to $string, $string 2, okay? And then down here, we're just gonna call PHP print new variable. All right, we refresh here, and it's gonna say there's a problem. And the reason why is because two strings together like this, it doesn't know what to do, right? So we can do like that and add those strings together. And then it's gonna say, hello, my name is Josh. So this is the first variable and this is the second variable. The other thing we can do is we can take out this 2 and add a dot before the equal sign. And what that does is it creates a continuance of string. So now all we'd have to do down here is use string like that, refresh, hello, my name is Josh. All right. So that is how to combine two strings together. There's other ways to do it, but for now, that's pretty much the most you need to know about adding those two strings together. All right. So the next variable we're going to talk about is let's see, we've got string, we talked about integer, let's talk about a boolean. Now a boolean is a true or false. So if we said my name is, and we called this true, that is telling anything that variable is true. So then we can say, let's call it something else. Let's call it true variable. And then let's do another one, call it false variable, false, right? So basically what that says is true variable is true and false variable is false. But we can say, just a variable here. We can just do a variable and then say whether that's true or false. So you might want to do that if you're doing a calculation, all right? So let's do this. Let's say if, and we're going to talk about ifs, for loops, while loops, else, we're going to talk about all of that stuff in a future video. But if we said, I'm going to watch my time on the video here. So if we said 5 is equal to 5, should be like that, $variable is equal to true, right? And then else $variable is equal to false. Now, with this if statement here, we can say $age is equal to 7. And we can say if age, let's say age is equal to 5, variable true, else variable false, right? So let's say age is equal to 18. So our content is not allowed to be accessed by anyone that is under the age of 18, right? So if age is equal to 18, then the variable is true. So let's say access is equal to true, else access is equal to false, right? So then down here, we're going to say, let's get rid of this here. Whoops. All right, so we're going to say echo does Johnny, wow, Johnnny, have access to the site? If access is equal to true, echo yes, else echo no. Okay, all right, so what we've done here is we've said this is Johnny's age, so we're going to make a comment right here and say Johnny's age, right? Johnny's age is 18. So if he has access, if Johnny's age is 18, then he has access. It's true. If his age is not 18, it's going to be false. Now, the problem with that if statement, and we're going to talk about if statements later on, is if he's 19, he's not going to have access. So we would need to say if Johnny's age is greater than or equal to 18, then true, else false. So if he's 17, it's going to be false because he's not greater than 18. Or if he's 24, it's going to be true, right? So now we've said age is equal to 24, age is greater than or equal to 18, access is true, else access is false. So let's put this to the page. Does Johnny have access to the site? Yes. And that is because his age is 24. Now, if we change this to 17, refresh, does Johnny have access to the site? No. So if we put this as 18, because age is greater than or equal to 18, then does Johnny have access to the site? Yes. So that variable, whether it's true or false, is called a boolean. And that is going to become very, very useful to you in your code writing later on, if it's not already useful to you. This video is getting really long, so I'm going to have to separate the variable types into 2 videos. So if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Remember to like this video, subscribe for more videos, and look for part 4, the continuance of variables with PHP, coming really soon.